Today we're diving into one of history's most incredible finds, the Dead Sea Scrolls. But we're not just going to talk about dusty fragments. We're asking a much bigger question. What do these ancient texts really teach us about a way of seeing the world that's been lost for 2,000 years? Let's get into it.
I mean, just imagine it for a second. Stumbling across a collection of writings, hidden away right when the Roman Empire was at its peak. And this isn't just some random pile of books. It's a deliberately chosen collection that holds the key to an entire community's way of life. Well, that's pretty much exactly what we have with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
You see, the real treasure here isn't just the ancient manuscripts. It's what they represent when you put them all together. It's like finding the spiritual DNA of a lost community. A complete blueprint for their beliefs, their rules, and what they thought about the entire universe.
Okay, so if we want to understand their worldview, we've got to start with the library they built, what was in it, and, just as importantly, what wasn't.
And first off, the sheer scale here is just staggering. We're not talking about a handful of texts. Archaeologists found pieces from about 800 different scrolls. This was a huge collection, all painstakingly copied and hidden away in those caves near Qumran.
But here's where it gets really, really interesting. Look at this breakdown. Sure, about a quarter of them are copies of books from the Hebrew Bible, but the vast majority, almost 3/4 of the entire collection, are something else entirely. Right away, that tells you this library was about way more than just preserving scripture. This was a collection of their own unique rules, prophecies, and beliefs.
And this really gets to the core of it. Think about a library today. It's meant to have everything, right? Science, history, fiction, the whole shebang. The Qumran Library was the complete opposite. It was laser-focused, a highly curated collection with one single purpose: to lay out and support a very specific religious life.
As the scholar Florentino Garcia Martinez puts it, this was a sectarian library. And what he means is there's no purely historical works, no science books, no poetry that isn't about God. Every single text in there served a religious purpose, reinforcing the unique beliefs of this one particular group.
And that leads us to the big question, right? A library this specific doesn't just happen. It's created by a community with a very clear, very urgent mission. So who were these people?
To really get the scrolls, you have to get the people who lived by them. And these were, let's just say, a people defined by their intense devotion to a very particular set of rules.
So meet the Qumran community. While there's still some debate, they were most likely a Jewish sect, probably an offshoot of the Essenes, who made a truly radical choice. They looked at the world around them, at mainstream society, and even the temple in Jerusalem, and saw corruption. Their solution? To literally walk away, to head out into the desert and create a pure society, totally separate from a world they saw as fallen.
At the very heart of their life was this concept called halakha. Now, this isn't just a list of thou shalt nots. Think of it more like the complete operating system for their entire society. It was a complex legal code, their interpretation of biblical law that controlled everything from prayer times and food purity to how they owned property. It was their blueprint for a life of perfect holiness.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Here, in their own words from one of their texts, we hear the absolute core of their identity. Separation wasn't just a good idea, it was a sacred duty. They defined themselves by what they were not and who they were not with. This separation was the bedrock of their entire worldview.
But why? Why go to such radical extremes? What was so urgent? Well, the answer is that they didn't just think they were living in a tough time. They believed they were living at the very end of history itself.
There's a fancy term for this: eschatology. It basically means the study of the end times. But for the Qumran community, this wasn't some abstract idea you debate in a classroom. It was real. It was the lens through which they saw absolutely everything.
And this right here is the absolute key to understanding them. Their rules, their purity, their separation from the world. It all served one ultimate purpose. They believed they were God's chosen few, the only truly righteous people left, and they had to be ready for the final judgment, which they thought could happen at any moment.
And they didn't think it was going to be a peaceful transition either. You look at texts like the War Scroll, and it is intense. This quote captures their belief in a final, violent, cataclysmic battle, where they would fight alongside angels to destroy evil.
This belief in a final war came from an even deeper idea they had, a fundamental conviction about the very nature of the universe. For them, the entire world was a battlefield.
Their whole theology was profoundly dualistic. What that means is they believed God created two opposing spirits to govern the world until the end, a spirit of truth and a spirit of deceit. And every single person, every action, every thought was aligned with one of these two sides.
And what's so wild is how clearly their own writings, like the Rule of the Community, spell this out. On one side, you have the Prince of Light, who guides the sons of justice down the paths of light. On the other, the Angel of Darkness, who rules the sons of deceit and leads him down the paths of darkness. There was zero middle ground in this cosmic war. You were on one team or you were on the other.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together now. We've looked at their very specific library, their strict rules, and their intense theology. So what do these texts teach us, above all else, about this lost worldview?
Well, it really boils down to four huge ideas. First, they were a people apart, defining themselves by radical separation. Second, their lives were governed by a total blueprint, their halakha, designed for ultimate purity. Third, they saw the entire universe as a battlefield between good and evil, light and dark. And finally, maybe the biggest one of all, they lived with the urgent, intense belief that the end was near, and their whole life was just preparation for that final event.
When you really think about it, the scrolls are so much more than just ancient artifacts. They are a time capsule. They preserve a worldview that is intense, all-encompassing, and just so radically different from our own. A world where every law, every choice, and every day was lived on the very brink of eternity.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The Dead Sea Scrolls opened a window into one incredible, lost version of human belief. How many other worldviews, how many other libraries of thought are still out there, buried, just waiting for their story to be told?